I've heard quite a lot about it today. I was asked, well, I'm just a colleague of yours, like everybody else probably on this platform, apart from the organizers. I am an interpreter, and I have been asked to share some of my experience in this field, and also share some do's and don'ts of what is required of us as professionals. But it's going to be quite difficult for me to talk about the do's and don'ts, especially after Miss Lee's long speech. She has actually enlightened a lot of us, although we have a lot of years of experience, but she has gone into a great detail talking about it. So I'll limit myself on that subject just to share some personal experience. Um, a lot of you guys, colleagues, I've seen online here, knows me, and I know a lot of you. But for those whom I don't know, I just like to introduce myself briefly. Well, I am an interpreter with over 20 years experience. I work mainly on the public services, with public services organizations. I started my career there with the Home Office. And with the experience, I started to work with courts, police, social services, NHS. So these are what you consider to be public services organizations here in the UK. And as the time went on, I went to register myself in a national register of public service interpreters, and got to have a job with the International Criminal Court at The Hague, mainly going on missions abroad. I was mainly going to Congo and the borders of Rwanda, where there's a great conflict there that has been going on for many years. So I was traveling with investigators to interview and interpret, obviously, my job as an interpreter, to interpret for them while they're interviewing witnesses and victims of conflict. And from then on, my first job, basically, for an agency was in 2017 when I was posted to Greece to work for what is known today as EUAA, European Asylum Agency, previously known as EASO. That's where I've been working since 2017 until December when I decided to return back to the UK. So as you can see, I have a lot of years of experience in this field, but nobody can say they know everything. I have to be very humble in front of you colleagues. We all make mistakes and none of us is perfect. So I'll just share some of my experience because there are different sectors when working with I will take the example of the immigration service. When working in the immigration service, either be here in the UK or abroad, first of all, you come across a client or the end user. Well, sometimes and most of the time they are vulnerable and they don't know what to expect when they've just arrived in a new country. They want to claim asylum if they are fleeing from persecution from their home country. And in places like Greece or Cyprus, where they have gone through a traumatic experience most of the time crossing the sea. So you're the first person whom they see when they come across immigration. They're identified to you as one of theirs because you're speaking the language. So they see you as one of theirs and they start to expect you to work for them or to help them. So this is where your skills as an interpreter or experienced interpreter will come into, but basically letting the immigration officer or the principal in this case to take a lead and put you into the right working conditions so that way you are not exposed and the applicant is not the applicant will not get what they're expecting from you apart from you're working as a professional. And then you come to the interview. It's the same scenario. They will see you there and they will think you're there to help them. And I'm this time talking about the applicant most of the time because you look like them most of the time. You speak their mother tongue. So you are their brother. You are their friend. But as an interpreter, you have to know how to distance yourself. And I found out that this worked for me most of the time when I first of all spoke to the caseworker or the interviewer, the principal. Beforehand, before any assignment, I used to always ask for short briefing. And that short briefing allowed me to prepare myself. It allowed me to prepare my vocabulary prior. Even if it's a short notice, psychologically, I would know who I'm dealing with and what kind of case I'm dealing with. And in that same briefing, I will also use the opportunity to ask to share a little bit of my experience, just a few seconds with the principal by asking them to introduce me correctly, if being in immigration setting, in order to avoid misunderstanding. So from that moment on, the interview can go ahead and you can go on to establish a proper trust between the two parties. So, like I said, I've been working as an interpreter for years. And from the immigration services, I've also worked in courts. And obviously, court work is not going to be the same as working for the immigration or working in the NHS or working in the social service or hospitals, because these are different settings. So each setting has a way for you to adapt yourself. We are not robots, and you cannot be a robot to expect to dress in the same way all the time, because most of the time, if you say you work in court and you wear a suit and tie, well, you cannot work like that when you're going on an immigration incursion. I participated in immigration operations where they go to the factories or they go to detention, they go to arrest illegal immigrants or people who have overstayed their stay in the UK, they stay in the UK, and these people are deemed to be deported. For example, we'll get in with the immigration into a house and address, and there may be 4 or 5 people there. 2 of them are supposed to be deported. The immigration service will detain them. But then they'll be given a choice, sometimes, to pack up a few things on the back, a few luggages. These people, they are looking at you as an enemy at that point. You are no longer their brother. You have come with the immigration to deport them. So as an interpreter, remaining impartial is always, withdrawing yourself from the situation and drawing a line that you are there just to have the communication is very important, because I've heard a story of a colleague in one of those raids, and the colleague, knowing that the applicant will be deported, tried to have the applicant to pack the goods. The moment the colleague touched one of her belongings, the lady just went straight to hit the interpreter, because she was like, "You are the one, you're selling us out. You're a traitor." So as an interpreter, you will face difficult situations whereby you could be interpreted as a friend, a brother, and you can also be considered to be an enemy. So I think most of the things that I could say in terms of experience in the field, well, if most of us have experienced them, so I don't think I need to go so much into details. But like I said, the do's and don'ts, I normally find that you need to establish, like I said earlier, trust from both parties. And how do you establish that? By withdrawing yourself from the situation, by referring to you as the interpreter always as Lee had just said earlier, and avoid getting into any misunderstanding. So if you're referring to themselves, if you're not you're referring to the applicant, you're using a third party always to refer to them. You will avoid a lot of confusion. So you don't get involved into the argument, or you don't get involved emotionally, and don't get involved into private conversation with the applicant, because most of the time the applicant will want to talk to you, ask you for your personal details, ask you for your help. Again, this is things that you need to establish from the beginning, that you are an interpreter and you're not there to help them or to harm them, but to make sure that everything they say is conveyed, and everything that they are told, you would convey the message clearly and faithfully to them. So I think those are quite some basics which we all need to know. I mean, the dress code, you cannot, like, I'll come back to the dress code again. If you are in the field, you will not dress up like you are in court, and vice versa. In an immigration detention, in an immigration raid, or at a border control, you will also dress differently, but make sure you withdraw yourself from the situation. So, working with various organizations requires a lot of flexibility. First of all, you will need to read into detail the code of conduct of the organization that is hiring you, because not every organization adheres to the same principles. Some people want to use you as a language, a cultural mediator, and in this case, most of them do not expect you to use verbatim. They do not expect you to use word for word. They want you to convey a message culturally. But in most cases, in court, police station, and various formal organizations, they expect you to be using verbatim always. It doesn't matter whether the sentence makes sense or not, but if it comes from the interview, from the third party, or the end user is using sentences which are evasive answers, you are not there to provide those answers. Even if you do know, you're there just to convey, just to repeat exactly what they said. If the principal did not understand the message, it's not up to you, or it's not up to me, the interpreter, to make clear what has not been said clearly. So I will leave that ambiguity to play around. And obviously, if the principal wants to dig further to understand what has been said, they will ask more questions. So basically, for me, 9 out of 10, I normally stick with verbatim, just meaning word for word of what is being said from one party to another. That avoid any confusion. But if I'm going to be there to paraphrase or to read what has been saying, even though culturally one thing might mean another, but in court, you cannot use that cultural knowledge. You have to repeat the words, and then up to them to decide which part to take or which part not to take, which part to pursue or which part not to pursue. So I'll give you an example. An immigration officer asks an applicant, have you got a family in the UK? The applicant says, no, I don't. Then immigration officer later says, but when you fill the form, you said your wife was here. So now you are lying to me. Well, when that question is put to the applicant says, how can I be lying to you? My wife is not my family. Because in the Swedish culture, he cannot marry his family member. So he does not consider his wife to be his family. So in this case, although me as an interpreter, I know that applicant understood perfectly well. Do you have a family member here? You did the translated. And he says no, but he is married. He does not consider his wife to be his family. Whereas in the UK, you're married, well, your wife is your family. So these are ambiguities, which as an interpreter, in those kind of settings, I will let them be. The caseworker or the interviewer will have to have the skills to ask the question to get the answers. Not up to me to say, no, your wife, and not up to me to modify the question to say, do you have your wife, do you have a family here or wife or children? No, because most of the sometimes they don't even consider the kids to be their family. For them, the family is my mother, my father, and my brothers and sisters or cousins, extended family. They don't consider the wife and kids to be their family members. So this is just one of the examples. So a lot of things that will come, a lot of those kind of things will come up during the working assignment, but you cannot um, you cannot consider that these things that come up will be identical. Just use your brain, do the best you can. If you know you are not competent, you will not do the job. Obviously, if they've hired you, that means they've checked your qualifications, your experience, and they do trust you. But you have to make sure that you display that. You have to make sure that you demand through your behavior, through your professionalism, people understand that you are there just to do a job and not to be judged. Because 9 out of 10, we get judged by the people in our communities who are we're gonna bump into a party in the shop or somewhere after the job has finished. So if you seem to have been working, for example, you'll be engaged into private conversation with the interviewing officer while the applicant is there and you're laughing, giggling, they might perceive it as though you are laughing at them or you're talking about them. So these are all situations which you as an interpreter have to withdraw yourself, not only from the applicant, but also from the officers involved in cases to avoid misunderstanding from both parts, because we are not there to help the people who've hired us to serve their purpose in a different manner. We are there to help the language barrier. That's all we are there for, nothing else, not to create friendship. So those are my experiences as an interpreter. I mean, since the immigration asylum tribunals went private in 2008, although I was working for them, work went through two agencies. I personally decided not to join any agency simply because we as a profession, we have been exploited by many commercial organizations who take a lot of fees and give us handouts literally. And most colleagues who are on the register here will know that interpreters' fees has not moved since 2000, early 2000. They've remained the same, if not being reduced all the time. Whereas in every other job, salaries have been going up. But our hours, the working hours are going down, the money is going down. So if everybody just go to these agencies, that means very soon we'll be working for peanuts. And some of us made this conscious decision not to join any agency. And when a working place, when a marketplace like LC comes across, and I was told that there's a place where interpreters can advertise themselves and their skills and be able to post jobs and accept jobs, and knowing having the transparency of what is being required, what is being paid, this is a win-win situation for all of us. For me, that's why I'm making that exception to work with LC, because they are not going to be exploiting interpreters like every other agency that is out there to exploit and make money in the back of interpreters. But at the end of the day, the interpreters get nothing. So if all of us decided today or tomorrow to stop working for agencies, our profession will certainly be respected again. So for me, I cannot do a very good job with explaining what else is because many people have, have done it, and they will continue to explain what it stands for. But from my understanding, this is a great place for me to be. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody who's attended the webinar, and that's it.